Hello guys, and welcome to our first tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be creating a character controller. This is going to be a very basic character controller where the character is able to walk, run, and jump. So what we need to do first is to go ahead and create a plane. This is going to be our ground. And then we're going to go ahead and tag it. So let's create a tag. And let's call this ground. We're going to go ahead and apply the tag to the plane. Then we're going to go ahead and create a character. This is going to be a capsule. And we can call this player. And then we need to go ahead and move this up 1 in the Y. And for our ground, let's make this 3 by 3. So it's big enough. Let's go to the camera and we could kind of adjust this a little bit so we can see how the character is moving. And then let's go ahead and drag that and nest it within the player. And we're good to go. Next thing we want to do is just let's create some material. So create a folder for that. Let's create one for the player and one for the ground. And for the ground, we can make it a darker color, so that's fine. And for the player, let's make it a little lighter red. Let's drag this and assign this, and we can start coding. Next thing you want to do is to go ahead and create some scripts. So let's create a folder for that. And inside the scripts folder, let's create another folder. Let's call this one movement. And in here, let's create a script. Let's call this one PlayerMovement. And let's open this up within our IDE. I will be using IntelliJ Writer for this. Give it a few seconds for it to pop up. I just feel like I'm running a lot of things on this computer that probably need to be shut down. Alright, so Writer is finally up. Let's go ahead and add this to the movement namespace. Just take out the errors, and let's go ahead and clear this up for now. I'm going to go ahead and go into presentation mode so we can see things more clearly. Make this a little bit bigger. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create some regions, and then we're going to create the fields that we're going to use for this project. Let's go ahead and create a region for the public fields. So I'm going to do public fields. And what do we need? Well, let's go ahead and utilize the header attribute, and we're going to do walk/run settings. For this, we need a public float. Call this one walk speed, and then we need another public float, and this is going to be the run speed, right? And then let's go ahead and create another header, and this is going to be for the jump settings. And for this, what we're going to need is another public float. This is going to be the player jump force, right? And then we need to go ahead and pass in a false mode for this. So it's going to be a public false mode. I'm going to call this one applied force mode. All right. Next thing we want to do is check the jump state of the player. So it's going to create another header, and this is going to be the jumping state of the player. And for this, we're just going to go ahead and use a public bool, and check if the player is jumping. All right. Next, we need to go ahead and create another region. This is going to be for our private variables. Do a private field. You know what? Let's actually here. Let's create another header, and let's call this one current player speed. So we can, this is going to show us what our current speed is. So we're going to do a public float current speed. All right. So now that we're here, we need to move in the X and in the Z direction. So we're going to create a private float. It's going to be underscore X axis, and then another private float. It's going to be underscore Z axis. Then we're going to go ahead and need to take the rigid body from the character. It's going to be rigid body. It's going to be underscore RB. And then we need to go ahead and collect what the player hits, because we're going to be using raycast to pretty much figure out if the player should jump or not. Okay, because we don't want to keep doing the jump if we keep pressing, let's say for example, the space bar, and have the jump occurring multiple times. So we're going to create a private raycast hit, and we're going to call this underscore hit. And then we need to check to see what our player hit, because we're going to be using that to figure out the distance between the player and the ground. So this is going to be vector 3, and this is going to be underscore, let's see, call this one ground location. And then we need to go ahead and use the caps lock, because that's the closest one to the ASWD keys, right? So this one's going to be a bool. We're going to see if we're actually pressing that down. So it's going to be a bool. Is caps lock pressed down. And I'm going to go ahead and just add this to the user dictionary. All right, so now that we have this, we can actually start coding. The first thing that we want to do is to get our rigid body component. So here, I'm going to create another region. I'm going to call this one mono develop routines. All right, so here we're going to need a private void start, and here what we need to do is we need to go ahead and get the component for the rigid body. So let's go ahead and create another region here, and this is just going to be us initializing components. All right. So here I'm gonna say underscore RB equals getComponent, and this is going to be of type rigidbody. The next thing we want to do is we need to go ahead and move the player, right? But before that, we need to go ahead and get our inputs. So let's go ahead and create a private void update function. And in the update function, we need to go ahead and get the horizontal and vertical. So here, we're going to go ahead and create a region. And this is going to be for our controller input. And here, we're going to say underscore x-axis equals going to be input dot get axis, and it's going to be horizontal. And for the z, be input dot get axis vertical. All right, so now we have this. What we can do now is we can try to move our character, and for this we need to go ahead and use fix updates, all right, because we're using the rigid body here. So we're going to go ahead and create a private void fix update, and in the fix update we're going to say let's create a region here, and this is going to be for to move the player. And to move the player, we can use the rigid body dot move position, and then we want to go ahead and use the transform dot position, right, plus time dot delta time times our current speed times transform dot transform direction. And we're going to be moving in the x and the z direction. Let me go ahead and just push this down here. Here, what we're going to do is pass in the x-axis, and since we're not moving in the y direction, we're just going to go ahead and pass in 0f here, and then we're going to go ahead and use the z-axis here, and then we're good to go. All right, so now that we have this, we're good to go. The next thing we need to do is to, you know what, let's go ahead and go back into our game environment, and let's see what this looks like. I'm going to go here and I'm going to click Save All, and let's go back into Unity. So I'm using Unity 19.2, which means that we no longer need the writer plugins folder here, and that's the reason why it's giving me an error. Let's go ahead and take that script, and we're going to go ahead and attach it to the player. All right, now let's click on the player here, and we can pretty much see what's going on to the right. So currently our current speed is set to 0. Let's give it a speed of 2. All right, so let's see if our player is actually moving, and it says here that rigid body is not attached. Okay, so I need to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and attach a rigid body component to the player, and let's go ahead and set the mass here to about 10. And for the constraints, since this is going to be a capsule, let's go ahead and just freeze the rotations on this. And now let's go ahead and hit play. So you can see that our rigid body is game is playing, and we can move front and back. It's really slow right now, but you should be able to see that we're actually moving. because the plane is actually shifting. All right, so at least we're able to move. We can't jump yet, which is fine. So let's go back into our script and we can continue from there. All right, so now that we have this, we need to actually be able to adjust our player speed. All right, so how do we do this? So what we can do here is create a function that we can use to jump, right? So here, let's go ahead and create another region. This is going to be hopper routines. And here, we're going to go ahead and create a jump function. So the private void player jump. All right, and in here we're going to take a float. This is going to be the jump false, and then we're going to take in a false mode, and this is going to be false mode. Next, what we want to do is we're going to do RB, all right, dot add false. And we want to add false in the y direction, so we're going to say jump false, right? This is going to be multiplied by the mass of the object to make this more realistic. So we're going to say rb.mass. Then we're going to multiply this by time.delta time, and then we're going to go ahead and multiply this by vector3 dot up. And then we're going to multiply by up, and then we're going to go ahead and pass the false mode to this. All right, and now we're good to go. So what we can also do here is we can check to see if the cap lock is being pressed, and here we actually need the OnGui. So the void OnGui, because this is the only way we can actually call the event here. So I'm going to say that we're going to check to see if the cap lock is being used. Underscore is cap lock pressed. It's going to be equal to event dot current event, and then we're going to call the caps lock here. Right. So with that said and done, we need to go ahead and check to see. We need to go ahead and change our speed, right? If to check if we can change our speed to be if the character is actually walking or running. And how can we do that? We can do that by actually adjusting it. So we can go to our update here, and let's go ahead and create another region. I'm going to say region, and we're gonna adjust player speed. All right, and here what we want to do is we're going to say that we can use the shortcut. You can say underscore is caps lock press down. If it is, then our current speed, right, should equal. So if it's pressed down, then we should actually run, and if it's not pressed down, then we should be walking. All right, so we can change our speed that way. So let's go ahead and try that out. However, what we want to do is we need to go ahead and jump, right? So we need to go ahead and do that. So what we can do here is apply jump. So how can we check that? Well, we can see if the player is still jumping, right? And then we can apply that to it. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's do this in the fix update. Right, you're gonna say create another region here, and we're gonna say player, right? Player jump applied. All right. I'm gonna say that if player is jumping. Then we're going to go ahead and say that player jump, and then we're going to pass in the player jump false, and then we're going to go ahead and pass in the false mode here, or the applied false mode. All right, so we should be good here. Let's go back into Unity and see how that looks like. So let's save this first. Let's save all, and let's go back into Unity. I'm gonna go ahead and close this down, and let's go ahead and run this. So if I were to press the so let's go here, and we can put our walk speed at 2 and our run at 6. So here I'm going to set this to 0 for now. All right, so when we go ahead and we start walking, you can see that the current speed here is actually set to 2. All right, so this is set to 2, and then when I hold the caps lock down, you see this is going to switch to 6. So now we can move much faster, so we can actually start running now. All right, so we're running. So next thing we need to do is, okay, and so also we should be able to start jumping, right? However, what we need to do is to check to see if the player should be jumping. All right, so what we need to do here is go back into our region, into our update. All right, so here what we need to do is we need to check the player jump status. So we're going to create a region, and this is going to be for the player. Make sure the cap lock is actually off. It's going to be for the player jump status. All right, so what we need to do here is we need to say that player is jumping equals, and this is going to be input dot get button, and we already have this defined within the input. This is going to be in the project settings. All right, this is going to be jump, and this is going to be for the space bar. All right, so if this is being pressed, right, then we can actually then jump, right? So let's go back and see what that actually looks like. Let me go ahead and save all, and then we're gonna go ahead and see what that looks like here. I'm gonna go ahead and stop this for a second and have this script load, and then I'm gonna go ahead and play that again. However, what we need to do here is we could change the jump falls to something like 20,000. All right, because we're multiplying this by time delta time, so we need a bigger falls for this. So now if I press the space key, you can see that it's literally just flying, and then you can see that it's actually falling down, and it should drop soon. However, the thing is that if I press this multiple times, then it's just going to keep going up and up and up, and we don't actually want that, right? We want to be able to just jump once and come back down, and no matter how many times we press the space button, we want it to not go higher than a certain height. I feel like this is a little bit too big, so let me press this down once. Okay, so not bad. All right, it's not bad at all. All right, so what we need to do is we need to go ahead and figure out, right, when to tell the character to stop jumping. All right, so what we can do is that we can actually use a raycast for this, right? We can shoot a light from the player down and check to see what the ray is hitting, and then if the player is jumping from the ground and the player is not on the ground, then we don't have to, then jump should be disabled, right? So we can only jump once. So let's go ahead and actually implement that. So let's go into our update, and here what we want to do is let's create another region here, and this is going to be to disable multiple jumps on the player. So what we can do here is use the debug dot let's use draw array here, and what we want to do is from the current position of our player, and then we want to go ahead and give it some direction. So we're going to use the transform direction, and this is going to take in a vector 3, so it's going to be vector 3, and we can use down, and then let's go ahead and multiply this by 10, right? And we can give it a color, so we're going to say color blue. Oh yes, this is blue. All right, and that's good to go. So at least we can visually see this within the scene. And then next we want to do is actually use the physics system to actually do the raycast. So we're going to say that if, right, physics dot raycast, and then what we want to do is pass in our current position, and then we need to go ahead and pass in the direction. So we're going to use transform direction, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pass in vector 3 down, and then we need to go ahead and pass out here. So I'm going to say out, and then here this is going to be our hit variable, right? And then we need to go ahead and pass in math. We can use mathf for how long we want it to actually go down, and this is going to be infinity. Let me make this a little bit smaller. All right, and then we can go ahead and code our logic here. So what we need to do first is to see if the player, right, is actually hitting the ground, right? So we're going to say that if, and we're going to use the string class. We're going to use the compare method of function. I'm going to say underscore hit, right, to see if it's whatever it's hitting, and this is going to be the collider, and pass in the tag. And if that is actually hitting the ground, right, then we need to go ahead and do something. So do string comparison ordinal. This is going to be equal to 0. So the player is actually on the ground. Then we need to go ahead and store our current location. So we're going to say underscore ground is going to be equal to underscore hit the point, which is going to be a vector 3. Next, we want to see actually where the ray is actually hitting the player. The thing is that we don't know exactly where the ray is coming from the player and actually hitting the ground, so we need to actually figure that out. So here we need to actually get that distance, right? So we're going to say there, distance from player to ground is going to equal to vector 3 dot distance, and what we want to do is pass in our current position. So do transform the position, and then we need to go ahead and pass in ground. And then what we can actually do is we could just log that to see what that value is. So we can use that value to figure out if we should be jumping or not. So normally what you can do for this thing is to actually have an empty object underneath the player, so right underneath the player, so you can actually use that instead, so you don't have to figure out the height. However, in this case, using a raycast just works as fine, so we're gonna actually just use that. All right, so we're gonna do a debug log, and here we want to pass in, let's pass in this is the distance, right? And then plus let's do distance from player here. All right, so now that we have this, let's actually go back into Unity. Let me save this. All right, so let's go back into Unity, and let me stop this for a second, and let's actually play this again. All right, so if you go into the scene, you can actually see that we have this ray, or this draw ray here that we have here is pointing to the bottom here. All right, and from here you can actually see that the ray is coming from the center of this object, and so we need to figure out the height. So you can see that the distance is actually 1 here, so we can use that. So let's stop this, and let's go back into our code. And since we know that distance, we can actually take out this log here, and we can say that if, right, distance is greater than 1f, that means the player is no longer on the ground. So what we can do is that we can set playerIsJumping, right, equals to false. All right, so let's go ahead and save this, and let's see if multiple jump has been disabled. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear this and hit play again. And now if we jump and we press the jump button multiple times, then we shouldn't be able to do anything. So what we can do is that we can walk. So here what we need to do now is we need to actually change the values for the walk speed and the run speed. So we can make the run speed like 3, walk speed 3, and then the run speed like 7. And let me go get out the inspector. So we're gonna do, let's do 2.5, and for the run speed, let's make this 6. So now we should be able to just move around in the scene, and if we hit the cab, you can see that the actual value here changed to 6, and now we should be able to run, which is much faster. Should be able to much faster, and then if you press the space button, you should be able to jump. So why did I use raycast for this? The thing is, because with raycast, this becomes really useful. All right, so what you can do is this: go back here and add in a new object. You can make this a cube, and let's just kind of move this around. And all we have to do for these cubes are, let's go ahead and duplicate this and move this around again, kind of put it down a little bit, and then all we have to do is pretty much just change the tags to ground, and we can change this to ground, and let's go ahead and play this again. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and jump on this cube. All right, it seems like I just missed it. All right, so if I do that and I put this as ground, no matter where I'm standing, it's gonna figure out if the player should jump or not. All right, so by doing this, we can just create multiple objects, and we can tell this by tagging it, we can make the player know that it's gonna be something that you can actually stand on. All right, and if you can stand on it, then definitely you can jump on it. There are many ways you can actually do this, and I hope to cover that in another tutorial. If you want me to actually show you guys how to use the transform to move things around, let me know. The thing about using transform versus rigid body is that transform, the input actually drives the object and makes the object move, which causes a lot of jittery, and that's why you have all of these jittery movements when you use transform. However, when you use rigid body, for example, if I were to collide on this, you don't see any jittery motion going on here. All right. Alright guys, this will be it for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed. Damn, it's 35 minutes. However, if you guys want to see tutorials like this, please let me know. If you enjoyed the tutorial, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe to the channel. And if you have anything that you want to actually learn, let your voice be heard, you can always write a comment down under this video and let me know exactly what you want to learn. I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good day. Bye bye.